Hello, I'm Nick Galante. I'm the Information Literacy and Technical Services Librarian here at the Cressman Library, and it's Banned Book Week 2025. Banned Book Week this year runs from October 5th through October 11th. It's a little later than it usually is. The American Library Association observes Banned Book Week every year around late September, early October, as a way to raise awareness about bans and challenges that happen all the time throughout the country. Let me consult my little cheat sheet here. In 2024, they release the stats every year in April as part of Library Week, but the actual observance happens now. In 2024, they recorded a total of 821 attempts to ban materials across the country, resulting in an individual count of 2,434 different books targeted over the course of those 821 challenges. Some of the statistics that I have here on my left, and I believe Nicole has
On your left.
on my left
Yeah,
in
it's
the
like Ethan.
in the frame and the graphic that she has built for this. Some of the statistics will show you not where these bans are taking place, who is initiating these challenges. I realize I should make a distinction between bans and challenges because I am using those words sometimes interchangeably. A challenge is any attempt to get a piece of material removed from the shelves in a library, in a school, wherever. A ban is when that material is actually removed from the shelf. Now, not all challenges result in bans, and the ALA, for the purpose of their record keeping, doesn't make a distinction between the two. That's why they call them bans and challenges. So some of these numbers may have resulted in materials actually being removed from the shelves. Some of them may just have been attempts that were unsuccessful. But looking at the data that the ALA released from last year, something that's been very different in years past. In years past, many of the challenges that came out for these materials came from individuals, parents, library patrons, guardians, etc. But in this past year, you can see these three pieces of the pie chart are green. They reflect, they've chosen different shades of green because they feel there is a commonality between these three groups, even though their records show them as being distinct from each other. Last year, they saw a record number of bans and challenges coming from organizations, interest groups, school boards, local politicians, people in authority. A record-breaking 72% of challenges were made by those types of groups. As I said, in previous years, challenges mainly came from individuals. This was a massive uptick in bans and challenges coming from organized groups and people in authority, rather than just ordinary members of the community. The individual numbers, the number of bans and challenges is down from last year on just a simple comparison level, one number to another, which is in defiance of a pretty long trend that we've seen over the last decade or so. You can see down here how this has looked over the last few years. However, the ALA has advised that we take that downtick with a grain of salt because based on other information that they have seen, they believe that there are trends of underreporting where numbers are just not making it to their collection. Censorship, what they call censorship by exclusion, stuff that's just not making it to the shelves in the first place, and so there wouldn't be bans and challenges. And at an even higher level than that, legislative restrictions at the local and state level that have prevented them from purchasing or displaying or allowing to circulate certain materials that meet certain pre-described criteria. But that is the overview of Banned Book Week. I encourage you to check out the American Library Association's website. They have detailed breakdowns of all of this information, in addition to the other graphic that I have here on my right or on my left.
Bottom left.
Bottom left. Okay, thank you. Is the top 10 most frequently banned and challenged books of 2024. They will have this detailed list along with the reasons these books were banned and challenged. And this is an important list to look at, not only because it tells you which books are being targeted, but when you look at the reasons these things are being banned and challenged, it sheds some light on the motivations behind the people that are making these challenges. What are they finding objectionable? What are they finding offensive? What are the issues of the moment that they're choosing to target? The most frequently banned book for 2024 was All Boys Aren't Blue. You can see it right here. That has been on the top 10 list for several years now. Offhand, I'm not sure. Was it number one last year, Nicole?
I think it was second.
Was it second last year?
So,
Yeah.
I think Janitor was first.
Janitor was first last year. I think you're right, which
They
is number
swapped.
2. They swapped. All of the books, it's worth noting, all of the books that are on the top 10 for this year have been on the top 10 list before, many of them multiple times. I don't think there's anything on the top 10 list for this year that is new to the top 10 list from previous years.
5. Tricks.
Tricks. Ellen Hopkins has been on a lot over the years. I think Tricks has been in the past, but I'd have to go back and confirm that. I could talk about banned books just unprompted forever. But as part of this, we put out a call for questions to our campus community to see, what do you guys want to know about banned books? What questions do you have about banned and challenge books? And Nicole has put together, right here, a jar.
But before you open that,
yes,
why have we elected you to talk about banned books?
That's okay. Yeah, why am I the one talking about banned books? I am incredibly passionate about this. As far as, I mean, most librarians have some strong feelings about censorship and book bans, but I do a deep dive into it every single year when the data is released. I am very passionate about fighting censorship and making sure books are available for people to read, and pushing back against it. So Nicole refers to me as our resident banned books expert. So here I am to talk about it.
Shake the jar up.
Shake the jar up. All right. So what we got here? Oh, that's a good one to start with. How can we better support all libraries who are facing an assault and lack of funding to make sure all books stay on the shelves? That's a very big question to start with, but it's a very important one. What can you do about this?
Which is a two-parter.
It is a two-parter. I feel like a lot of these are going to be two-parters or multi-parters.
Academic versus public.
Yeah. So how can we better support all libraries who are facing an assault? Well, the unfortunate answer to that is almost all libraries are facing an assault, whether it's people demanding materials be censored, removed from the shelves, funding cuts across the country, whatever. So what can you as an individual do? The first and most obvious one is to support your library. Show up, check stuff out, participate in their events. Donate. Yeah, if you have books that you want to get rid of, if you have money you want to donate, movies, some libraries will even take audiovisual materials, board games, video games. Certain libraries even have what they call libraries of things, where people can come and check out like small appliances or tools or whatever. I think there's one in the place in the area that does like a karaoke machine even. So the most important and the easiest thing that you can do for your library is to show up and be a part of it. Because having that data, having that information of the people that are there, what they are doing there, how they are using the space, and that vocal support is an important factor in getting that funding and keeping the funding and keeping the doors open. The other thing that you can do that's a little less obvious is to make sure that the people in power hear that you value your library and want to support it. So whether that's at the local level, local library board, school boards, city councils, local representatives, state representatives, federal representatives, everybody up the chain. Just make sure that they know that you value your library and value the free and open access to information. I'm just going to look over this again, make sure I didn't miss anything. Make sure that all books stay on the shelves. Yeah, if you don't know if your local library has dealt with stuff like this, ask the librarians. They'll be able to tell you. You can say, hey, has anything been censored? Has anybody tried to get books off the shelves? And ask them specifically, how can I help? Because I've given some blanket advice, but individual libraries are going to have individually different needs. And finding out what your specific library needs from you is often the best way to act. All right, next question. So shake it every time? Is that
No.
okay? Around a little bit. All right. What rights do readers have when it comes to banned or challenged books? That is a big question. Got a lot of big questions this year. This is good. I like big questions.
How many questions did we get?
I think our last count was 26,
Nice.
something like that, which is, yeah. So what rights do readers have when it comes to banned or challenged books? Well, that's kind of a complicated question because some of it depends on local laws, state laws regarding First Amendment stuff. And this has been something that's been debated off and on in the US for a long time. Until, I think I had something written down here about, until 1959, when the Supreme Court overturned obscenity laws. There were federal bans on books that were deemed offensive, obscene. So obviously in that sense, despite people arguing in favor of First Amendment access to free speech, information, etc., there were people who disagreed with that. So this is a tricky question to answer because part of it is how I would interpret something like free speech and how people in power making the rulings interpret something like free speech. I would say free speech is your friend in this situation, and if you find yourself in a situation where a book has been banned or challenged, fall back on that.
I think another right, like a right for readers, is you have the right to read or look at whatever you want to look
And that
at.
is certainly how I interpret that. I don't feel that anybody has the right to tell you what you can and can't read. If an individual doesn't want to read a book, okay, great, they don't have to read it, but why should they tell you that you can't read it?
However, what about children?
That's a whole separate issue that I am not going to weigh in on at this moment.
So age appropriateness is where that
But
would
age
get into.
appropriateness is its own minefield. What is age appropriate? Who determines that? How do you know?
Yeah.
Why do books carry a heavier burden of censorship over other forms of media, like TV, podcasts, etc.? Well, so something like TV, let's start with TV. TV does have some censorship. The FCC has a pretty tight control over what is allowed to be broadcast on certain networks at certain times. There are a number of restrictions on what can and can't be said or shown or done on TV at any given moment. And as a result of that, it's much rarer that you get sort of a top-down, I don't want this TV show on the air. Podcasts, I think, I don't know, I'm not familiar at all with the sort of regulation that exists on podcasts. So I feel like
That's more platform based.
Yeah.
So the
platform could choose to not list something, but then you get into, is it free speech because the provider is a private company, they have the right to list or not list whatever they want. That's a whole other mess.
I would like to also add in that with TV
Please.
and film, they have the grading system, like not grading
Well,
system.
for film,
but the rating
certainly,
system.
yeah, they have the rating system, G, PG, PG-13, etc., which gives you some idea of what you're getting into.
Which is obvious.
Which is
versus
more obvious.
books that it's within the.
There's a vague adult, young adult, children, and people might disagree with, as we just said, people might disagree with the type of content that a child and young adult can be exposed to. And I think for that reason, to go back to this question, why do books carry a heavier burden of censorship? Just to go back to this data here, censorship by the numbers. Hopefully you can see it better where Nicole has the graphic on the frame.
We will also have the ALA website linked to
Wonderful.
the video.
But in this chart here, everything in blue is books. So this definitely shows books and graphic novels, excuse me. This green is 2%. It's films. And there are a number of others. I think, and this is speculation, but I suspect that books carry the biggest burden here because of the environment of libraries. Libraries offer a variety of different media, a variety of different services, but we primarily associate libraries with books, and books are still the primary reason that people go to libraries. And as you are wandering the shelves, you see certain things. You see books that, if you are part of one of these groups, you find offensive, you find objectionable. It's there, and you might feel that it has no right to be there.
Yeah. A key point of that is the 6% that is in pink that says displays.
Displays, yeah.
Which highlights these books.
And you can have displays for various monthly observances. Right now we're in the midst of Hispanic Heritage Month. And it's also LGBT History Month.
Yes.
Which is, just to glance back at the top 10, frequently something that pops up in banned and challenged lists, books that deal with LGBTQ plus content, LGBTQ plus characters. So let's see. Oh, this is an easy one for me. What is your personal favorite banned book? I mean, I say that's an easy one, but I love banned books. I had a professor in college who handed us the top 100 most frequently banned and challenged books of the last decade, and had us vote on what we would read in her class. It was a young adult fiction class, and she said, "This is a recommended reading list. Anything on here is worth reading." So there are a number of things on there that I enjoy, but if I had to pick one, I would go with His Dark Materials by Philip Pullman. I think it's a phenomenal young adult book. The protagonist is fantastic. The writing is beautiful. The ideas are thought-provoking and interesting. Nicole, do you want to throw something in here?
I think mine is Dracula.
Dracula?
Yeah.
Has Dracula been banned and challenged?
It's been challenged.
Oh.
Because of afterlife and religion. So that whole debate.
Yeah.
Because haven't Frankenstein also been challenged at one point?
I don't know. I don't think Frankenstein has been challenged. I have to look into that. It doesn't come up as listed.
There are a bunch of classics that were.
A bunch of classics have been frequently banned and challenged. Grapes of Wrath, Catcher in the Rye, Great Gatsby, Lord of the Rings.
Catcher in the Rye would be my second.
Anything by Ernest Hemingway has been banned and challenged. I think of Mice and Men as well. Steinbeck's been banned and challenged a number of times. Toni Morrison is on the top 10. Blues Die is number 3 from last year. She is a repeat offender. Toni Morrison is actually in contention for one of the most frequently banned and challenged authors of all time. The short list, because the rankings keep changing, but the most frequently banned and challenged authors of all time are Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, Stephen King, Judy Blume, and Dave Pilkey, the guy who wrote Captain Underpants. Those are like
and
constantly
if you just did a
jockeying
massive
for the top 10.
gaps in the audience.
Yes. Captain Underpants. Anything by Dave Pilkey has been frequently banned or challenged for reasons as silly as you can imagine.
Yeah.
All right, moving on.
Well, I feel like we know who that one's from.
I definitely know who submitted this one. These are anonymous, but I definitely know who submitted this one. Isn't it true that reading banned or challenged books is a sign that you are more intelligent and better looking than those that seek to censor and ban them? The only acceptable answer to this is yes.
Which, fun fact, we did not censor the questions either. Because how can we censor the questions?
Why would I censor the questions? That would defeat the whole purpose.
Censorship.
So I will, even though this person says the only acceptable answer is yes, I am going to focus on the first part of this that says, isn't it true that reading banned or challenged books is a sign that you are more intelligent? I wouldn't say more intelligent, but I will say, to keep this academic, yeah, there are a number of studies that show that there is a correlation between people who read more and people who are more open-minded, more empathetic, more willing to learn new things. And by reading, you often get to step into the experiences of another person, of another group that you are not a part of, and sort of walk around inside somebody else's skin for a while. All right. What does it mean when a book is banned versus challenged? I did kind of address this in my overview, but just to reiterate, a challenge is any attempt to remove a material from a library or school. And when I say school, I mean either the school library just sitting on the shelf or as something that's been taught in a class. Any objection that anybody makes, any complaint that anybody makes, the ALA registers that as a challenge. A ban is if that book is actually removed.
And is that statewide or countrywide?
It is usually at a local level.
So county.
County, school district. There have been instances of bigger, but they are much rarer. Generally, these incidents are pretty local. Are book bans increasing in the United States? If so, why? Again, I did talk about this with my overview, and it's kind of, as I said, it's a complicated question because for the last decade, the ALA has registered an increase every single year in number of bans and challenges and number of titles that have been banned and challenged. The ALA actually on their website, under the censorship by the numbers page for book bans, they actually have a map that you can scroll through the last 10 years, state by state, and you can see how the challenges have increased state by state across the country. Now, 2024, as I said, was the first year in a long time that we've seen a sharp decrease in the number of bans and challenges. But as the ALA observes, they encourage us to take that with a grain of salt because they have seen an increase in legislation from groups in authority, activist groups, special interest groups that limit the actual availability of those materials in the first place. So as the ALA points out, you can't have a ban or a challenge for a book that was never allowed to be on the shelf in the first place. So they obviously wouldn't have data for that. But they consider the fact that that book never got to the shelf as a form of censorship.
Which I have a question to add to that because we keep talking about the ALA.
Yes.
So what is the ALA and how is it different from the Library of Congress? And are the librarians from the Library of Congress part of the ALA at a leadership level?
The ALA is the American Library Association. That's a nationwide organization that I don't want to say all, but most public libraries belong to. And they are the ones, the ALA is the organization compiling all the data from libraries across the country that allows them to report on censorship. It is distinct from the Library of Congress, which is a single physical building. The Library of Congress probably owns more than one building, but you know what I mean. As far as the last part of your question, Nicole, are the librarians of Congress part of the ALA? Probably.
But not in the leadership positions.
Not in the leadership positions, no.
The current ALA president is not part of the Library of Congress. But they are, so most librarians are members.
Yes.
So I just thought we should talk about that given the current transition that's happening in the Library of Congress versus the ALA.
All right. What is the legality of book bans since it is a type of media censorship? Well, that's the very issue that I'm talking about, is what is the legality of it? And you have certain groups that are trying hard to make it a legal thing. And it has been a legal question for decades. The First Amendment protects free speech and free expression. So as far as the ALA is concerned, as far as I'm concerned, we shouldn't be banning books because that is an infringement of the First Amendment. However, this obviously gets complicated because you have a bunch of people trying to censor books, trying to regulate them, trying to ban them from shelves. As I mentioned earlier, the United States had some pretty strict obscenity laws up until the late 50s that really prevented the availability of certain books, even at a national level. When that was struck down by the Supreme Court, when obscenity laws were overturned by the Supreme Court, they cited the First Amendment, that obscenity laws ran counter to the First Amendment. So I would argue that book bans are not legal under the First Amendment, but obviously there are people who disagree with me.
And also, we have to remember laws can go from local to state to
Absolutely,
national.
yeah.
So there's different levels.
There's
of this.
different strata of this. How does the US compare to other countries in terms of censorship and book bans?
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a very good question. I know there are plenty of examples throughout history of other countries banning books. Um, and generally, I will say generally, the higher proportion of censorship tends to go hand in hand with more authoritarian regimes. Nazi Germany, the Soviet Union, Communist China, etc. Um, even going back hundreds of years to monarchies declaring that certain writers had to be punished, the church declaring that certain writers were heretical, excommunicating them. It generally falls into the realm of trying to control the information that people have access to. As far as on a contemporary level, I'm not sure about that. Where do we rank in terms of compared to other contemporary nations? I couldn't say. The focus of the ALA, as the name implies, is on the US. And I would have to do some research.
Which I think even with that research would be a little bit hard.
It probably would, and especially a regime that is more likely to censor probably is not going to have that data freely available.
Mhm.
Has the Cressman Library or Cedar Crest College ever faced a challenge to a book in its collection? Not to my knowledge. Nicole, you've been here a couple years longer than me. Can you
I
think
think
of an
we've
example?
heard stories of it, but this was like 70s, 80s, so
Yeah,
like
not while we've been here.
yeah.
And I will point to my data here. Only 2% of all challenges recorded by the ALA happen in college libraries. And for this reason, I won't say college libraries are immune to this, and knock on wood there. But college libraries tend to get more grace than public libraries or grade school libraries because students are adults here. A lot of times, the challenges to books are done with the justification of protecting children from offensive material. And so, for that reason, colleges tend not to fall under that kind of scrutiny. But obviously, they can. 2% of all challenges in 2024 were at colleges and universities. But to my knowledge, Cedar Crest has never had to deal with that.
No,
And I hope we never have to.
the students have been known to like talk to the professor about comfort levels.
Yeah, that's true. Our
Which is
professors are
different.
generally pretty good about, if you're uncomfortable with material, please talk to me. And there's a very big difference between somebody saying, I don't want to read this, this makes me uncomfortable, which I would never force anybody to read anything that makes them uncomfortable. Where I take issue with and where the ALA takes issue is when somebody comes in and says, I don't like this, so nobody's allowed to read it. Moving on. Why is it important for people to have access to books that some groups may find controversial? Well, as I mentioned, I'm going to refer to my top 10 here. What does it mean for something to be controversial? No, it's
subjective.
Nicole's looking at me and like kind of thinking, and that's a deliberately big question. It is subjective. What I find offensive is going to be different from what Nicole finds offensive and what other librarians find offensive and students find offensive. It's going to really vary from person to person.
Mm-hmm.
So, who are we to tell you what is too controversial? And as far as the importance, I mean, if we take the word controversial and look at the trends in the types of books that are being banned and challenged, I'm just going to take a quick look at this so I can. Oh, this doesn't have the reasons on it. It just says why this book matters, and there's a URL. But just glancing at this, our top two books for last year were All Boys Aren't Blue and Genderqueer. Also on this list, we have Flamer, The Perks of Being a Wallflower, And I'm pretty sure one or both of these Ellen Hopkins books deals with LGBTQ stuff as well.
Yeah,
I know Ellen Hopkins touches a lot on LGBTQ stuff.
And then Toni Morrison, if I remember, it's because of race.
Toni Morrison's usually race and sexual content.
Mhm.
So when we look at the types of content that's generally challenged, it's stuff that deals with LGBTQ individuals, stuff that deals with racism, books that deal with or feature some sort of sexual content in them. And the definition of sexual content is pretty wide from my experience.
And then we have books like Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Because of magic.
Because of magic. Lord of the Rings, because of magic. So what is offensive? That's a broad question. As far as why is it important for people to have access to these books, there is a pretty disturbing trend of, when you look at the list of books that are frequently banned and challenged, there is a disproportionate level of books being featured that focus on the stories of minorities, people of color, LGBTQ people, people with disabilities. And when it's that disproportional, it's hard to say that it doesn't feel like a concerted effort to silence those voices. And people in those groups deserve to have access to literature that speaks to them, that reflects them, that resonates with them. And as I mentioned, since reading more books is more likely to make you more empathetic, if you are not a member of those groups, reading books about those people's experiences can help you better understand them. Mm-hmm. What role do librarians play in protecting access to books? So the whole reason that Banned Book Week exists as an observance, the whole reason that the ALA tracks these numbers, is because the ALA feels that it is not the mission of libraries to pass judgment on information and prevent people from getting access to it. As librarians, our job is to help you get access to information. And if there is legislation or efforts in place to prevent us from getting certain information, that makes our jobs more difficult, because we want to make sure we get you the most appropriate information for your needs, the best information for your needs. And for other outside forces to try to tell us what information we can and can't access is kind of contrary to everything we try to do. So it is important to note that the ALA only tracks these numbers. The ALA has never implemented a ban in its history. They have never recommended a ban in their history. And they never will, because it's contrary to what librarians do. We like to see full shelves in libraries. We will never try to get anything put away. What is the history behind banning books, and what makes it a dangerous practice? So I kind of alluded to this earlier. The history behind banning books is banning books is banning information and preventing access to information and preventing people from getting access to information that you, and by you I mean whatever governing body we're talking about at the moment, or influential group, doesn't feel that people should have access to. And this has been going on for all of human history.
When was the first book?
The very first book, who knows? At some point in history, at some point in the early days of human civilization, somebody wrote something down and somebody else objected to it, I'm sure. But as far as the United States goes, that we do know. The very first book ever banned in the United States actually happened 100 years before the United States actually was a country. It's about a century before the American Revolution. I did write it down because I will never remember the full title. It is the very first book banned in the Americas was called The Meritorious Price of Our Redemption by a man named William Pynchon. And it was a religious critique that the Puritans took issue with. And the General Court of the Massachusetts Bay Colony, I also wrote this down on my cheat sheet because I love it. I just love the language that they use. They decided that it was heresy and they banned it. saying that they claimed that, quote, perceiving by the title page that the contents of the book were unsound and derogatory, they believed that Pynchon was, quote, endangering the faith of such as might read them. We held it our duty and believe we were called of God to proceed against him accordingly. The book was banned in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. It was burned on the Boston Common, and Pynchon had to divest all of his assets to his son, and he fled to England where he lived for the rest of his life. That book was banned because the Puritan rulers of the Massachusetts Bay Colony found its content offensive, because it contradicted Puritan teachings. They wanted no part of it. They ordered the book destroyed. I do also want to note that they said, perceiving by the title page that the contents of the book were unsound and derogatory. That sounds to me like they didn't read the book. They just looked at the title page and said, no, this is bad. But again, this was done out of not wanting people to have access to what they felt were heretical ideas.
I see a thick paper one that I want you to grab.
This one?
It's a choice. It's next to that one.
This one?
No, behind that one.
This one.
Yeah, it was chunky.
Oh, that is a big one. Oh, this is a long question. I remember hearing as a student in junior high/high school that if you borrowed certain books from the library, you could be put on a watch list. The title I remember this about in particular is Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf. It gives Big Brother is watching vibes to think about, but I don't know if that was just fear-mongering or kids passing along silly made-up rumors. Is there any truth to such rumors? If so, what does this really even mean? Oh boy, that's a big question. Not just because it's long, but there's a lot going on there. So to address the first part, I heard that too when I was in middle school and high school. I don't know, did you hear that, Nicole? There were certain books that were like...
I didn't have a store library.
Oh, you didn't?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was in the other store of my high school.
Gotcha.
Which we couldn't access because we weren't part of that store, but we shared the building. So no.
Well, I do remember hearing that. I always assumed it was kind of just, as this person says, kind of fear-mongering, kids passing along silly made-up rumors. I'm not sure what the story of that is. I mean, I would imagine there's certain things that a person could do to get up on, like, you know, an FBI watch list.
So this reminds me of the question I had in grad school for library science, which is the ethics question. And it then goes in line with the reference interview. So the question we're asked in grad school to answer as an ethics thing, because all fields has an ethics test, is if an individual comes up to you to ask you how to make a bomb, what do you do? The answer as librarians, because we're meant to be neutral, is to ask further questions to have a better understanding of what
exactly the needs are.
Yes.
Yeah. What are you going to be using this for?
So that may be why you would assume
potentially. Yeah, and I mean certainly at the time I don't know the age of the person who submitted this, but at the time that I was in middle school, high school, we're talking about Columbine era, and whether there was a desire to sort of be on the lookout for early warning signs, that I could certainly understand. But the ALA certainly doesn't have a database of people to watch if they check out Mein Kampf.
No, because it goes back to librarians are meant to be neutral.
Whether or not there are other groups that are looking out for potentially, I don't want to say problematic, but potentially worrisome patterns, that I couldn't say. So, sorry, that was a big, long question, and my answer to that big, long question was, I don't know, sorry.
We only know what we know as librarians.
Yeah, but I'm a librarian, so I could probably find it out if I really wanted to.
So be on the lookout to our social media.
I may have to do a follow-up to that question. As an English secondary ed major, I'm very concerned about the potential of encountering book bans in the workplace. If I go on to teach at a school considering book bans, what resources can help me advocate against book banning as effectively as possible? So I actually can speak to this because I have, the last several years, I've talked to our pre-service teachers here at Cedar Crest about this and how they can better navigate this.
Be gentle with your hands, so you're shaking the camera.
Am I shaking the camera? I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I gesture a lot. But there are a couple things that I can recommend. Harvard University has outlined, I think it's an 8-step procedure for teachers that are considering books that are potentially controversial and ways that they can start conversations, like meaningful conversations with parents, with students, with administrators about how they can best incorporate those works into their teaching. The ALA also has a number of resources to help with this.
Which is how we got these graphics.
Which is how we get these graphics. The ALA is really big on book ban activism, so I would say look at the ALA's website. They have a bunch of ways that you can get involved, ways that you can contact them, local groups that you can get in touch with. But there are a wealth of resources at your disposal that can help you build a compelling case against book bans from the ALA. And I would say that that piece from Harvard University, I am blanking on the authors' names, but there's a piece on from Harvard University that is designed to help educators navigate those difficult conversations.
Which we will have linked under this video to make it easier.
I know that, like, for example, something like Huck Finn, frequently banned and challenged book, cornerstone of American literature, cornerstone of the high school English classes. They help you walk through how you could present, say, I want to teach Huck Finn, I understand it's controversial, this is why it's valuable. Their steps help you navigate exactly how to do that. Good question. How can students support access to diverse voices in literature? Speak up. That is the biggest thing to do. If you are a student and you see that books are being censored, that voices are being silenced, whether in your local library, in your classroom, in your community, speak up about it.
You have more power than you think.
Yeah, and if nobody says anything, nothing gets done. If one person speaks up, that inspires a second person and a third person. It takes a lot of guts to be the first person to speak up and say, hey, this isn't right. But there's usually a lot more people who are waiting for that first voice. So be that first voice. How do book bans impact freedom of speech and academic freedom? Directly. I don't know how much more I can say about it than that, but you're limiting access to information. And
well,
when
not
you limit
even just information, but knowledge.
Yeah, information and knowledge. You're limiting access to information. You're limiting access to knowledge. You're limiting access to certain voices. That has a direct impact on freedom of speech. That has a direct impact on academic freedom. Voices are being silenced. That's a pretty one-to-one connection. Upside down. Can you cite an example of a book that was banned, but the opposite effect happened and it became incredibly popular? It happens a lot.
The Hunger Games.
I can think of a really recent one, actually, from just a couple years ago. Mouse, the graphic novel by Art Spiegelman.
M-A-U-S.
M-A-U-S, yeah. Cressman Library owns both volumes, by the way. Highly recommend it. Mouse is a graphic novel by Art Spiegelman, who's a cartoonist. He retells his father's experiences in a concentration camp during the Holocaust. His father was a Holocaust survivor. Incredibly powerful book, incredibly popular, critically acclaimed. I think, unless it's happened in the last couple of years, I believe it's the only graphic novel to have won the Pulitzer.
I believe so, but I think there might be one.
There might be one more. It was certainly the first one back in the 80s. But Mouse was being used a couple of years ago in I want to say it was a history course in, I think it was Tennessee. And it got pulled from the curriculum. Now, that book wasn't even banned in the school. It was just pulled from the curriculum. and the backlash was incredible. People loudly objected to it. The ALA objected to it, I believe. A bunch of different groups spoke up about it. Art Spiegelman spoke up about it. A publisher I think a publisher of Mouse offered to send copies for free to students in the school district. And the sales of Mouse shot up by like 200% or something in the weeks afterward. So generally, that does happen. If a book is banned and there is any sort of attention on that ban, it shoots up in popularity. There is very often a direct reaction to that, which is good. I like that, but I wish it wasn't necessary in the first place. What are some examples of books that have been banned or challenged recently? How do book bans affect students, educators, and libraries? I think I've touched on both of these already, especially that second one. But examples of books that have been banned or challenged recently, I'll refer again. These are the top 10 books from 2024. Every year, the ALA releases the 10 most frequently banned and challenged books of the year, and every decade, they release the top 100. There are other places that you can find comprehensive lists. I think Wikipedia has actually a really good list of books that
the ALA also has it by decade.
Yeah.
Also.
Mm-hmm.
So as far back, I think
1990 was when they started tracking the top 10. They have lesser data from the 80s, but 1990 was really where they started tracking it pretty intently. So the ALA website has a great list from the various years and decades. Wikipedia has a pretty comprehensive list. You can find lists all over the place and news articles anytime this sort of thing happens. All right, just a few left. We're getting there. Isn't banning books a violation of the First Amendment right? We've gotten a lot of First Amendment questions tonight. Books correlate to education, from social to educational, so the banning of them leads to an uneducated society. How are we supposed to get access to this information and perspectives? Exactly.
By talking to you, the higher-ups.
Yeah. Banning books, I would argue that banning books is a violation of the First Amendment. The ALA argues that banning books is a violation of the First Amendment. And as I have said a couple times, and as this person says in their question, there is a direct connection between books and education. So if you want access, make a stink about it.
Mm-hmm.
When you see that information is being restricted, when you see that materials are being banned and censored, speak up.
Or if you see your favorite author is being petitioned against.
Yeah.
Like we had a visiting author 2 years ago now, Kelly Yang.
Yeah.
Who was frequently challenged.
Was that 2 years? Was that two or 3 years ago? Yeah.
Who was frequently challenged in Barnes and Nobles.
Yeah, Kelly Yang is a frequently banned and challenged author. Is there a standard set of criteria to use to challenge a book to determine if it is bannable, or is the selection process arbitrary? I have talked about this a bit. It is arbitrary because there is no standard set of criteria because there's no single body that's doing this. There's no single group that's doing this. As I said, the ALA does not implement bans in any way. They do not recommend banning in any way. They are very against it. So because you have so many different groups, different people contributing to this data, there is no unifying set of data. There's no unifying set of criteria. A book doesn't reach a threshold and then the ALA doesn't put a stamp on it and says, okay, this is banned now, because that's not something they do. It's just whatever arbitrary criteria, whoever it is that takes offense to the book decides.
And the reasonings tend to be like one word, with a specific topic.
Yeah, usually a topic. Well, the ALA distills it and kind of puts stuff together, but in years past, they have released like specific complaints for certain books, and some of them are very funny. I remember it's an older one, but I think it was for Charlotte's Web. Charlotte's Web was frequently banned and challenged in like shortly around the time it was published because somebody thought the idea of talking animals was satanic. They said that having talking animals was heretical and implied that animal was the same intelligence as man, and that's why they wanted it banned. So there's no rhyme or reason to it. Outside of Soviet-controlled Russia and Nazi-occupied Germany, what other countries have banned books? Most of them. Most of them. I'm focused mainly on the U.S., but I can safely say that at some point in their history, either in the past or currently,
Mhm.
most countries have attempted to or successfully banned books. 3 left. Oh, we have a fun one. If you could choose to be a character in any banned or challenged book, what book would it be and why? That is a tough one.
Ooh, ooh.
You have an answer ready?
I have 2.
Go for it.
Catcher in the Rye, the main character.
You want to be Holden Caulfield? Really?
Spirit animal sometimes.
Okay.
And you can't even deny that one. That would be my spirit animal. And then Dapsy from the Great Dapsy.
Gatsby.
Even though he dies in the end,
I was gonna say,
he
you're-
partied his life
I
away.
don't know if I want to be either of those characters.
He partied his life.
Ooh.
That or Nicholas, the narrator from the date.
Oh,
Great
yeah.
Gatsby.
Nick Carraway.
Yeah.
Great Gatsby. I mean, I don't want to go. It feels like a cop-out to go back to his Dark Materials, but
Not Lord of the Rings?
Lord of the Rings is on there too. I would love to be a hobbit. Being a hobbit sounds great.
I would be the dragon.
Sam Gamgee, just, hang out in the Shire, garden, cook.
Nope, dragon for me.
Or an armored bear from his Dark Materials. They're pretty cool.
That's true.
So many good things in fantasy. Is there a hierarchy of banning? In other words, is the lowest level at a particular school and then an entire school district? Does it ever get higher? Like, does a state government have the ability to ban a book from the state? Yeah, there is. I mean, there wouldn't be a standard hierarchy, but yeah, that's how it works.
As far as the person can reach.
Yeah, it usually starts at a local level. Somebody objects to a public library or a public school or something that's being taught in school. And usually that's where it stops. Usually it doesn't go any farther than the local level. But there are definitely examples of bans at a higher level, at a county level, at a state level.
The group of moms from last year's. I forget what Moms for Liberty.
Oh, Moms for Liberty.
Yeah.
They've certainly tried to get stuff banned at the state level. It doesn't happen so much at the federal level anymore since the overturning of obscenity laws. But yeah, for a while in the United States, stuff could be banned at the federal level under federal obscenity laws. But when the Supreme Court overturned obscenity laws in 1959, I don't think we've had anything banned at the federal level since then. Or not successfully, at any rate. I'm sure people have tried.
So the short answer to that is yes. It can go from
Yes,
local all the way up. It's
all
just
the
a
way up.
matter of the person who would like to file the complaint and how far they're willing to go.
Yep, and how far their influence can reach. Usually, it's much more, the higher you get, the more difficult it is, for obvious reasons. All right, last question.
Unless I have more for you.
This is actually a pretty good one to end on.
Okay.
In your opinion, first professionally and then personally, is there ever a time when it would be appropriate to ban or challenge a book? I would say no. I think that there are plenty of examples. I can say that professionally and personally. There are plenty of examples of books that I would not want to read. Plenty of books that I would not enjoy if I read. But I don't feel it is my business to tell anybody else what they can and can't read. And so I would not. It's very easy to not read a book. It takes absolutely no effort to not read a book.
I think the only time we would say not to read a book is if it's falling apart and we need to put it back together.
Yeah, I would be concerned about a book falling apart or having mold on it. That would be the only time I would tell somebody, hey, don't read that. But it would be, please give me that specific copy of that book because that should not be in human hands at the moment. It might be a biohazard.
Also, because I'm the voice behind the stream.
Yeah.
I'm Nicole Rivera. I'm the public services librarian, and I also handle all the tech for this so that we can do videos. So I will be providing all the links that Nick has mentioned resources of, that they will be under this video, as well as assisting with social media, because all of these graphics we have will also be on our social media, as well as the graphics that we use for this video.
So thank you, Nicole, for all of your hard work. Thank you, everybody who submitted questions for this. Got a lot of good questions this year. Enjoy Banned Book Week. Read a banned book.
Yeah. Hang out with a librarian.
That too.